At dinner, my boyfriend threw his drink on my face when I refused to give him cash. I believe in signs. Not the mystical kind, but the subtle warnings life gives you before everything falls apart. The problem is, when you're blinded by possibility, those signs might as well be written in invisible ink. I thought I hit the jackpot the night I met Nathan. Designer watch, custom suit, smooth confidence. He looked like a man who had it all. It was a Friday evening at Lumiere, one of those rooftop lounges where drinks cost more than dinner anywhere else. I was only there because my friend Tara dragged me as her plus one to a corporate event. I was planning my escape when I noticed him at the bar. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a midnight blue suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. But it wasn't his appearance that caught my attention. It was how he moved through the room like he owned it. "That's Nathan Ellis," Tara whispered. "Some tech entrepreneur. Started his own company last year. Everyone's talking about him." I nodded, pretending to be unimpressed. Boston was full of tech bros with inflated egos and rehearsed elevator pitches. 10 minutes later, I was alone at the balcony when a voice behind me asked, "Mind if I join you?" Nathan stood there, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Up close, his hazel eyes had a warmth that made my practiced indifference waver. "This crowd can be exhausting," he said, handing me a fresh glass. "Thought you might appreciate the good stuff. They've been serving the cheap champagne to everyone else." We started talking, and unlike most men at these events, he actually listened. He told me about Horizon Systems, his healthcare AI startup that had just closed series of funding. He showed me his company's sleek graphics on his phone. What struck me wasn't just what he said, but how he said it with genuine passion, not pretension. When I told him I was a graphic designer, he didn't dismiss it. "Creative work is undervalued," he said. "Good design is what separates memorable brands from forgettable ones." 2 hours passed like minutes. When the event ended, he asked for my number. 3 days later, he picked me up in a sleek black Audi for our first official date. He took me to Maison, a French restaurant so exclusive it didn't even have a sign outside. The maitre d' greeted him by name. "Mr. Ellis, your usual table is ready." Nathan ordered wine without looking at the list, a rare vintage that made our server's eyebrows raise in approval. Halfway through dinner, he received a notification on his phone. "Sorry about that. Just got confirmation that our latest round of testing exceeded expectations." He tilted the screen toward me, showing an email thread with impressive statistics and a bank notification for a substantial deposit. "This calls for a celebration." He ordered champagne, and when it arrived, he raised his glass. "To new beginnings." That night marked the start of a whirlwind romance. Over the next few weeks, Nathan took me to exclusive restaurants, a private art showing, even a spontaneous weekend trip to New York where we stayed in a suite overlooking Central Park. He always insisted on paying, waving away my offers to split the bill. "I'm old-fashioned that way," he'd say. "Besides, I remember what it was like starting out. You should invest in your career right now, not waste money trying to keep up with me." His generosity was both extravagant and thoughtful. He sent flowers to my office, remembered details from our conversations, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. When my laptop died during a crucial project, he showed up at my apartment the next day with a top-of-the-line replacement. "Consider it an investment in your talent," he said when I protested. One evening, as we lounged on his friend's yacht, borrowed for our date, he explained, watching the sunset paint the Boston skyline in gold, I realized I was falling for him. Hard. It wasn't just the luxury or attention. It was how he made me feel. Special, understood, valued. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, pulling me closer. "How perfect this feels," I admitted. "Almost too perfect." He smiled, kissing my forehead. "Get used to it, Lily. This is just the beginning." Our relationship progressed quickly. Within a month, we were practically inseparable. Nathan would often show me screenshots of his impressive bank balances or property investments, which I took as signs of his transparency. "I want you to know who you're with," he'd say. "No secrets between us." He introduced me to his world of luxury and privilege with such ease that I barely noticed how one-sided our knowledge had become. I showed him my entire life, my apartment, my friends, my family during a weekend visit, while his world remained curated, presented through carefully selected glimpses. When I met his business partners at a charity gala, they raved about Nathan's vision and success. "He's going to change the healthcare industry," one told me, clapping Nathan on the back. "You've found yourself a winner." And I believed I had. In Nathan, I thought I'd found someone who was both successful and emotionally available, the unicorn of the dating world. Every day brought new evidence of his success and devotion. When he surprised me with diamond earrings on our 2-month anniversary, I was speechless. "Only the best for you," he whispered, fastening them to my ears. I was living in a dream, the kind where everything is perfect and nothing hurts. The universe, it seemed, had finally dealt me a winning hand. What I didn't see were the signs, those invisible warnings that would become blindingly clear only in retrospect. The perfect first impression was just that, an impression. A carefully crafted illusion that would soon begin to crack, revealing the truth beneath the expensive suits and practiced charm. 3 months into our relationship, I was still floating on cloud 9. Nathan had become the center of my universe, the first person I texted in the morning and the last voice I heard at night. My friends were equal parts envious and concerned about the speed of our relationship. Tara, who had introduced us, was particularly vocal. "Don't you think it's moving a little fast?" she asked over coffee one Saturday. "You barely know him." "I know enough," I defended, thinking of how attentive Nathan was, how he remembered every detail I shared with him. "He's different." Tara sighed. "Just be careful, Lily. When something seems too good to be true." I dismissed her concerns as jealousy. What did she know? She hadn't found someone who treated her like a queen. Little things didn't add up. His phone was always dying. He never let me visit his place. And he borrowed my credit card just once. That first crack appeared about a week after my conversation with Tara. We were planning dinner when Nathan's phone died mid-conversation. It happened so suddenly that I joked about it when he called back from another number. "Your phone has the worst timing." I laughed. "I know," he sighed. "I'm waiting for the new model to be released next month. This one's battery is shot." It seemed reasonable enough. But then it happened again 2 days later. And again the following week. Always at oddly convenient moments, when I asked about meeting his parents, when I suggested stopping by his office to bring lunch, when I mentioned a friend had seen him at a restaurant when he told me he was in a business meeting. "Just bad luck," he'd say with a charming smile. Technology, right? Then there was his apartment. Or rather, the mysterious place he supposedly lived that I'd never seen. 3 months in, and I still hadn't been to his home. There was always an excuse. The building's undergoing renovations. My cleaning service messed up the schedule. I have investors staying over. Instead, he always came to my place or met me directly at restaurants. When I pressed him about it one evening, his response was oddly defensive. "Don't you trust me?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. I thought we were past that kind of insecurity. His reaction made me feel childish for asking, so I dropped it. But the question lingered. The borrowed credit card happened after a romantic dinner at an exclusive sushi restaurant. When the bill came, Nathan patted his pockets and frowned. "I can't believe this," he said, looking genuinely embarrassed. I switched jackets at the last minute and left my wallet in the other one. "It's fine," I said immediately. "I can cover it." No, he insisted. "That's not right." "Wait." He pulled out his phone, showed me his banking app with its impressive balance. "See? I've got the money. I just don't have my cards with me. How about I pay you back double tomorrow? Consider it an apology for my forgetfulness." I handed over my card, touched by his concern over what seemed like a minor mishap. But the next day, when he took me shopping to make it up to me, he asked to use my card again. The bank flagged my accounts for suspicious activity since I've been spending in different cities, he explained. "Just a precaution. They're sorting it out, but it might take a day or 2. I'll transfer you the money right away." He showed me a transfer confirmation screen, and I believed him. But the money never appeared in my account. When I mentioned it casually 3 days later, he seemed genuinely shocked. "It didn't go through? Let me check." He fumbled with his phone, frowning. "The network must have glitched." I'll do it again right now. Another confirmation screen. Another promise. Another delay. The doubts were piling up, but I pushed them away. Until that day in Copley Square. I was picking up a coffee when I spotted Nathan across the plaza, engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument with an older man in a shabby suit. Their body language was tense, Nathan gesturing frantically, the man jabbing a finger at his chest. I moved closer, curious and concerned. Tired of your excuses, the man was saying. 3 months of rent. Either pay up by Monday or you're out. Rent? Why would Nathan, who had shown me bank accounts with 6 figures, be behind on rent? I approached cautiously. Nathan? Everything okay? The color drained from his face when he saw me. Lily, what are you doing here? Before I could answer, the man turned to me with raised eyebrows. You know this guy? Tell him his fancy talk doesn't pay the bills. 3 months behind and still driving that fancy car. Nathan quickly stepped between us. This is a misunderstanding. Mr. Patel is confused about some paperwork. I'll sort it out. He practically pushed me away from the scene, his hand firm on my back. Who was that? I asked once we were out of earshot. Nobody important, Nathan replied, his usual smoothness returning. Just a subcontractor who's trying to squeeze more money out of the deal. Happens all the time in business. But I'd heard what the man said. Rent. 3 months. He said something about rent. I pressed. Nathan's expression hardened for a split second before melting into a laugh. Is that what you thought he said? He's mad about the rate we agreed on for his services. Language barrier. He's new to the country. The explanation didn't sit right, but Nathan quickly changed the subject, suggesting we go shopping for a weekend trip he was planning. As he led me toward Newberry Street, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just witnessed something important, a glimpse behind the curtain of Nathan's perfect life. That night, lying awake beside his sleeping form in my bed, I faced an uncomfortable truth. I was dating a man whose life was largely a mystery to me. And the few times I'd gotten close to that mystery, things didn't add up. The fantasy was developing cracks. I just didn't know how deep they went. A week after the incident in Copley Square, Nathan called to invite me to dinner at Costello, the most expensive Italian restaurant in Boston. A place where entrees started at $50 and reservations were booked months in advance. How did you manage to get a table? I asked, still cautious after what I'd witnessed. I know the owner, he said, that familiar confidence in his voice. Besides, I have something important to discuss with you. Tonight will be special. Special. The words sent my mind racing in contradictory directions. Part of me, the part still clinging to the fantasy, wondered if this was leading to a proposal. The other part, growing more suspicious by the day, wondered what new story I was about to hear. I decided to dress the part either way. I wore the black cocktail dress Nathan had complimented once, paired with the diamond earrings he'd given me. If this was going to be a night of truth, I wanted to face it looking my best. Nathan picked me up in his Audi, looking immaculate in a charcoal suit I hadn't seen before. He seemed tense but covered it with excessive charm, opening my door with a flourish and complimenting me effusively. You look absolutely stunning tonight, he said, his eyes lingering on the earrings. Those diamonds were made for you. Costello lived up to its reputation. Crystal chandeliers, original artwork, waiters who moved like ghosts between tables. The maitre d' greeted Nathan warmly, leading us to a secluded table in the back corner with a perfect view of the Boston skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Mr. Ellis, always a pleasure, he said, presenting us with leather-bound menus. Nathan ordered a $300 bottle of wine without hesitation, then proceeded to recommend dishes as if he dined here weekly. The truffle risotto is exceptional, he told me, reaching across the table to touch my hand. And you must try their osso buco. Life-changing. I studied him as he spoke, noting the slight twitch in his left eye that hadn't been there before. His usual confidence seemed forced, overwound like a clock ready to spring apart. Is everything okay? I asked. Perfect, he replied quickly. Why wouldn't it be? We're celebrating tonight. Celebrating what? Us. The future. He raised his glass. To new horizons. The first course arrived, delicate scallops with a saffron sauce that probably cost more than my daily grocery budget. Nathan barely touched his food, instead draining his wine glass and immediately pouring another. By the main course, he'd nearly finished the bottle alone and ordered a second. His charm was slipping, revealing something jittery and desperate beneath. He checked his phone repeatedly, typing rapid-fire messages when he thought I wasn't looking. "Business never stops," he said with a tight smile when he caught me watching. I nodded, cutting into my perfectly cooked steak. "Speaking of business, how's the new project going? The one you mentioned last week." "Fantastic," he replied, too quickly. "We're about to close another round of funding." "That's great. Which investors are you working with this time?" A flash of annoyance crossed his face. "You wouldn't recognize them. Private equity guys." "Try me. My uncle works in venture capital. Maybe there's a connection." Nathan's smile froze. He took another large gulp of wine, then suddenly leaned forward, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Look, Lily, I need to ask you something important." "Here it comes," I thought, bracing myself. "I'm in a bit of a situation," he continued, eyes darting around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Just a temporary cash flow issue. The thing is, I have a major payment due to our development team tomorrow morning, but the wire transfer from our investors is delayed until next week." My stomach tightened. "What kind of payment?" He picked up the wine bottle, refilling his glass to the brim. "I need $5,000 by morning. Just until next week. I'll pay you back with interest." $5,000. The number hung in the air between us like smoke. "That's a lot of money, Nathan." I know, he said, reaching for my hand again. This time his palm was sweaty. "But it's nothing compared to what's coming in. Look." He pulled out his phone, showing me an email that appeared to be from a venture capital firm, mentioning a pending transfer of $250,000. "See? The money's already approved. Just caught in banking bureaucracy." His eyes had a pleading intensity I'd never seen before. "Lily, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't absolutely crucial. This payment keeps the entire project on track." I pulled my hand away, remembering the man in Copley Square. The credit card that was never repaid. The phone that conveniently died. "I don't have that kind of money, Nathan." "Of course you do," he countered immediately. "Your emergency fund. You mentioned it last month." The fact that he remembered that casual comment and was now trying to access money I'd saved over years sent a chill through me. "That's for emergencies." "My emergencies?" His expression darkened. "This is an emergency. Do you have any idea what I stand to lose if this falls through?" "I'm sorry, but no. No." His voice rose sharply, drawing glances from nearby tables. "After everything I'd done for you? The dinners, the gifts, the trips?" "Those were gifts, Nathan. Not loans with expectations attached." He picked up his wine glass, his hand shaking slightly. "You really won't help me? When I need you most? I can't give you $5,000. For a moment, he was completely still, his face unreadable. Then something shifted in his eyes, a cold calculation replacing the desperation. "I see," he said quietly. "So this whole time, all your talk about supporting each other, about being a team, that was just talk. That's not fair." "You know it's not fair," he hissed, leaning across the table. "Dating someone who's too selfish to help when it actually matters." Before I could respond, he stood abruptly, grabbing his full wine glass. For an instant, our eyes met, his blazing with a rage that transformed his handsome face into something ugly and unfamiliar. Then the wine hit me, a shock of cold red liquid splashing across my face, soaking my hair, running down my neck onto my dress. The glass clattered to the table, rolling off and shattering on the marble floor. The restaurant fell silent. Every head turned toward us. "You're just like all the rest," Nathan spat. "Useless when it counts." With that, he threw his napkin down and stormed out, leaving me frozen in shock, dripping with expensive Cabernet, humiliation burning hotter than tears on my cheeks. The waiter rushed over with napkins. A woman from the next table hurried to help, offering tissues from her purse. But all I could focus on was the bill Nathan had left behind, nearly $500 for a dinner neither of us had finished, and the horrible realization that the man I'd fallen for never actually existed. I wasn't going to cry over him. I was going to find out who he really was. After the restaurant manager graciously waived the bill, apparently I wasn't the first woman to be abandoned their mid-meal. I took a rideshare home, my dress still damp with wine, my mind racing. Humiliation had quickly given way to anger, then to a cold, focused determination. By the time I reached my apartment, I had a plan. If Nathan Ellis was going to make me feel like a fool, I would make sure he never fooled anyone again. I started with what I knew for certain: his name, his phone number, the license plate on his Audi. The phone number was a dead end. When I tried calling it the next morning, it was already disconnected. But the car gave me my first real lead. I had a friend, Miguel, who worked at the DMV. I hesitated to involve anyone else in my humiliation, but pride had no place in this investigation. "I need a favor," I told him over coffee. "It's about a guy who took advantage of me." Miguel's expression hardened. "Name it." 2 days later, Miguel called with information. "The Audi isn't registered to anyone named Nathan Ellis. It's leased to a Thomas Reynolds with an address in Cambridge." Thomas Reynolds. I wrote the name down, my hand shaking slightly. "The weird part," Miguel continued, "is that the credit check for the lease was run on a third name, Daniel Westbrook. 3 different names. One man." The puzzle was getting more complicated and more interesting. I searched all 3 names online, finding little that connected them until I stumbled across a small claims court filing from 8 months ago. A woman named Rebecca Chun had sued Daniel Westbrook for fraud and theft, claiming he borrowed money under false pretenses while pretending to be a successful entrepreneur. My heart raced as I read the court summary. The case had been dismissed when Westbrook failed to appear and couldn't be located. Rebecca had been seeking $7,000, money she claimed was stolen after Daniel had convinced her they were in a serious relationship. It took 3 attempts to reach Rebecca, who initially hung up when I mentioned Daniel. On the 4th call, I blurted out my situation before she could disconnect. "He threw wine in my face when I wouldn't give him $5,000, I said. "Please. I need to understand what happened to you." Silence. "Then, what name is he using now?" We met at a quiet coffee shop in a suburb far from Nathan's usual haunts. Rebecca was elegant, composed, a successful dermatologist who seemed an unlikely victim for a con man. "I felt like such an idiot," she admitted, stirring her tea. "Daniel, or whatever his real name is, swept me off my feet. Expensive dates, thoughtful gifts. He told me he was developing a medical device that would revolutionize surgery. As a doctor, that interested me professionally. The pattern was familiar. The whirlwind romance, the impressive business venture, the sudden financial emergency when an investor pulled out unexpectedly. Rebecca had transferred money to him 3 times before growing suspicious. The 4th time, I insisted on seeing documentation, maybe talking to his business partners. That's when he disappeared, changed his number, vacated his apartment overnight." "His apartment? You saw where he lived?" She laughed bitterly. "It wasn't his. After he vanished, the Real owner returned from a 6-month sabbatical in Europe. He'd sublet it fully furnished to someone who looked nothing like Daniel. Same scam, different middleman." Rebecca had filed police reports, pursued him through small claims court, even hired a private investigator. All dead ends. But she'd kept detailed records of everything, which she now shared with me. "I traced the Audi," I told her. "It's registered to someone named Thomas Reynolds." Recognition flashed in her eyes. That name was on some paperwork I found in his apartment. I thought it was a business associate. We pieced together our information, creating a timeline. Rebecca had dated Daniel from January to April. I'd met Nathan in June. Between us, we identified 6 different addresses for supposed business ventures and nearly $15,000 in borrowed money. "There have to be others," Rebecca said, her clinical detachment slipping. "He's too practiced at this." She was right. Using the details from our combined research, I created a social media post without naming Nathan directly, describing his methods and including a vague physical description. I shared it in several Boston women's groups with a burner email address. Within 48 hours, I had 14 responses. 5 were current or former victims with stories mirroring our own. 2 more had narrowly escaped, growing suspicious when loan requests began. The remaining messages offered support or similar experiences with different con men. One email stood out from a woman named Jasmine. He's using the name Eric Bennett now. Dating my roommate. They've been together for 3 weeks, and yesterday he mentioned his investors are being difficult. That email included a phone number. I called immediately. Your roommate is in danger, I told Jasmine. Can we meet? By week's end, I'd assembled a group of 7 women spanning 3 years and 5 different identities of the man I'd known as Nathan. In a private room at the back of a restaurant nowhere near his usual territory, we compared notes, photos, and stories. Melissa, who had dated Alexander Frost for 5 months, had lost nearly $20,000 in business investments and never recovered a dime. Vivian had been left with $12,000 in credit card debt after James Sullivan had added himself as an authorized user without her knowledge. He targets professional women with good incomes and savings, Vivian explained. Women who won't miss small amounts at first, who have the means to help when he finally asks for the big money. And who would be too embarrassed to report being scammed, added Melissa. Together, we created a detailed profile of our scammer. His real name, according to the most thorough background check we could assemble, was likely Nathan Thomas Westbrook, a patchwork of the aliases he'd used. He had a sealed juvenile record in Connecticut and had been cited for petty fraud in his early 20s before graduating to more sophisticated cons. The question now, I said, looking around the table at these strong, intelligent women he'd targeted, is what do we do with this information? 7 determined faces looked back at me. We take him down, said Rebecca, her voice steady. Thoroughly and completely. If he wanted to play games, I'd rewrite the rules. We gathered at Rebecca's elegant townhouse to finalize our plan. The 7 of us, professional women who'd been manipulated, deceived, and robbed, sat around her dining table with laptops, notebooks, and fierce determination. Exposure alone isn't enough, said Melissa, who'd lost the most money. He'll just move to another city and start over. We need evidence that will stick, added Vivian, the lawyer among us. Something concrete enough for police or prosecutors to take seriously. Jasmine's roommate Kate, the newest target who had never actually given him money, offered the perfect bait. He's been hinting about a big investment opportunity. Says he only offers it to people he really trusts. And he trusts you? I asked. Kate smiled coldly. He thinks I inherited money from my grandmother last month. I've been dropping hints about wanting to invest it wisely. Our strategy took shape over bottles of wine and shared stories of Nathan's techniques. We would set up a fake investment opportunity, turn his own game against him. Kate would mention a friend whose father was a silent partner in a venture capital firm looking for promising startups to fund. He'll never pass that up, Rebecca predicted. His whole persona revolves around being a successful entrepreneur. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Kate would arrange a dinner with his supposed investor's daughter, played by me, the only one he hadn't met besides Jasmine, who would bring along her father's assistant, Rebecca, to evaluate Nathan's business pitch. We'll need to record everything, Vivian advised. Boston is a 2-party consent state for recordings, but we can work around that if we're careful about what we ask and how we phrase things. We spent days preparing. Rebecca, with her medical knowledge, helped craft questions about his supposed healthcare AI that would expose his ignorance. Melissa, who worked in finance, developed inquiries about his business model that no legitimate entrepreneur could evade. I studied everything the group had compiled about his background, identifying contradictions in his various stories. Meanwhile, Kate played her part perfectly. She reported that Nathan was growing increasingly excited about the opportunity, even showing her falsified business plans and revenue projections he was preparing for the meeting. He actually stayed up all night working on them, she said with a hint of disgust during our final planning session. He's created an entire fake company history, complete with employee profiles he pulled from LinkedIn. The night of our sting operation, we rented a private dining room at Vento, an upscale restaurant where 2 of our group knew the owner. We wired the room with 3 separate recording devices, hidden in a centerpiece, a purse, and under the table. Vivian's brother, a cybersecurity expert, helped ensure our technical setup was flawless. I arrived early, dressed in a conservative black suit, my hair pulled back, glasses perched on my nose. Nothing like the Lily that Nathan had known. Rebecca joined me, equally transformed in her role as the investor's assistant, armed with a tablet and stern expression. At precisely 7 o'clock, Kate arrived with Nathan, now calling himself Eric Bennett. He wore a new suit and the same confident smile that had once charmed me. If he was nervous, it didn't show as he shook my hand firmly. Eric Bennett, he introduced himself. Kate speaks very highly of you and your family connections. Charlotte Winters, I replied, using my prepared alias. This is Ms. Huang, my father's executive assistant. Nathan didn't recognize either of us. Why would he? Con artists see marks, not people. As appetizers arrived, we guided the conversation toward his business ventures. Nathan launched into his well-rehearsed pitch about Horizon Health Analytics, the same fictional company he'd described to me months ago. Our AI algorithms can predict patient outcomes with 94% accuracy, he claimed, sliding over a folder of impressive-looking charts and projections. We're already in preliminary discussions with 3 major hospital networks. Fascinating, I said, sharing a glance with Rebecca. Which machine learning frameworks are you using for your predictive models? A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Proprietary systems, mainly. Rebecca tapped her tablet. Could you elaborate on your training datasets? Healthcare data requires specific privacy protocols. Of course, he said smoothly, though sweat began to bead at his temples. We work with anonymized patient records provided by our research partners. Which partners specifically? I pressed. He named a prestigious hospital that Rebecca happened to know well. That's interesting, she said, because I contacted their innovation department this morning, and they've never heard of Horizon Health Analytics. The color drained from Nathan's face. There must be some confusion. We work through a subsidiary partnership. No confusion, Nathan, I said, removing my glasses. Or should I call you Daniel? Or Alexander? Or James? You seem to have trouble keeping your name straight. Recognition dawned in his eyes. Lily, surprise. I smiled as the door opened. Melissa, Vivian, and our other 2 group members walked in, forming a semicircle behind me. The blood drained from Nathan's face as he recognized each woman. What is this? He whispered. I leaned forward. This is what happens when you underestimate the women you scam. We compare notes. Rebecca tapped her tablet again, and a screen descended from the ceiling. On it appeared photographs, documents, and timelines, the complete history of his cons meticulously assembled. 7 women. 5 identities. Over $50,000 stolen. I narrated as the slideshow progressed. All fully documented, all ready to be shared with police in 3 different jurisdictions. Nathan's eyes darted toward the door, calculating escape. Don't bother, said Vivian. The restaurant staff knows not to let you leave. And everything you've said tonight about your fake company, we have it all recorded. His face contorted, that familiar charm giving way to desperate anger. You can't prove anything. I smiled again, cold and satisfied. Actually, Nathan, we already have. He thought I was another easy target. He should have picked a different girl. Nathan's facade crumbled completely in that private dining room. With escape routes blocked and 7 of his victims staring him down, his charm transformed into something ugly and desperate. This is ridiculous, he sputtered, loosening his tie. You can't ambush someone like this. It's entrapment. That's not how entrapment works, Vivian replied calmly. But I'm sure your court-appointed attorney will explain the difference. What happened next revealed Nathan's true character more clearly than any of his previous actions. He lunged across the table toward me, knocking over wine glasses and sending the bread basket flying. You vindictive bitch. He never reached me. The restaurant's security guard, whom we'd briefed beforehand, restrained him while Melissa calmly recorded the outburst on her phone. "And that's assault," she narrated for the video, "to add to fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny." Within 20 minutes, police officers arrived. We'd filed reports in advance, providing them with our evidence dossier. They escorted a handcuffed Nathan through the main dining room, past curious diners who paused mid-bite to watch the spectacle, and into a waiting patrol car. "Ladies," the lead detective said before following them out, "this is some of the most thorough investigative work I've seen from civilians. Don't be surprised if you get calls about job opportunities." We celebrated that night at Rebecca's townhouse, 7 women bound by a shared experience that had transformed from humiliation to triumph. The following days brought a whirlwind of activity as our case against Nathan Thomas Westbrook, his real name, finally confirmed through police records, took shape. But the most unexpected development came 3 days later when my phone exploded with notifications. Our story had gone viral. It started when Jasmine, who worked in media, shared an anonymized version of our sting operation on her blog. A local news station picked it up, then national outlets. Within a week, our tale of women banding together to catch a serial fraudster had resonated across the country. My inbox filled with messages from other women who recognized Nathan from his various aliases and locations. And more surprisingly, from victims of completely different scammers who were inspired to pursue their own justice. "You've started a movement," Tara told me over brunch, scrolling through articles about our case. "They're calling you the Scammer Slayers." The publicity had unexpected consequences for Nathan. Former associates, seeing his face splashed across news sites, came forward with additional allegations. A former roommate revealed stolen identity documents in their shared apartment. A nightclub owner recognized him as the man who'd bounced checks for private party reservations. His carefully constructed house of cards didn't just collapse, it imploded spectacularly. When I testified at his preliminary hearing 6 weeks later, Nathan couldn't even look me in the eye. Gone were the designer clothes and confident smile, replaced by a prison jumpsuit and defeated slouch. The prosecutor informed us afterward that given the mounting evidence and charges from multiple jurisdictions, Nathan faced significant prison time. "He's looking at 8 to 10 years, she explained. "And that's if he accepts a plea deal. If this goes to trial, with all 7 of you testifying plus the additional victims who've come forward, he could get much more." Financial restitution would be part of any sentencing, though we knew the likelihood of recovering our money was slim. Nathan had spent most of it maintaining his illusion of wealth, the leased cars, designer clothes, and expensive restaurants that served as bait for his schemes. But for me, the victory wasn't about money. It was about reclaiming power. 6 months after that fateful dinner when Nathan threw his drink in my face, I stood before an audience of 200 women at a financial literacy and personal safety workshop organized by our newly formed advocacy group. "I'm not going to tell you not to trust people," I said into the microphone, scanning the attentive faces. "That's not the lesson here. The lesson is to trust yourself, those instincts that whisper when something doesn't add up." Rebecca joined me at the podium. When I first realized I'd been scammed, I felt ashamed. I thought my education and success should have protected me. Now I understand that predators like Nathan specifically target accomplished women because we're used to solving problems, not walking away from them. Melissa added, "And because they count on our silence afterward. They prey on our fear of judgment." Our organization, Phoenix Network, named for rising from the ashes of bad relationships, now connected victims of similar scams across the country, providing resources, support, and, when possible, pathways to justice. The diamond earrings Nathan had given me, which turned out to be high-quality cubic zirconia, now hung in a shadow box on my office wall. A reminder not of humiliation, but of resilience. Beside them was framed the headline from the Boston Globe, "Con Man's Victims Turn the Tables, How 7 Women Orchestrated the Perfect Payback." Sometimes I still think about Nathan sitting in his cell, wondering how his perfect scheme unraveled. I imagine him replaying that moment in the restaurant when he decided to throw his drink in my face rather than accept my refusal with grace. The moment he mistook my boundaries for weakness. The moment he picked the wrong woman. I lost money, time, and briefly, my self-confidence. But I gained something more valuable: unshakable trust in my own judgment and a sisterhood forged in shared resilience. He thought I was another easy target. He should have picked a different girl.